circling around town, as well as new bus routes being proposed on campus.
Then, learn more about the Black experience in Fort Collins and how CSU student government plans to change housing restriction laws, specifically U+2.
All this and more on CTV starting now. Good evening, Rams. I'm Mattison Brumagim.
And I'm JJ Mckinney. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight.
A fellow student here at Colorado State University passed away in DeWard Hall Sunday morning. Sydney Megan, a first-year student from Littleton, was unresponsive and not breathing in the dorm when medical personnel arrived on scene. Life-saving measures were attempted, but Megan did not survive. Her mother shared that Megan was flourishing during her time at CSU, and she had just joined Chi Omega sorority. Her cause of death is still being investigated, but it is encouraged for any student or staff member impacted by her loss to utilize the resources offered here on campus. All of us here at CSU and CTV are sending out our thoughts and prayers to the family of Sydney.
The ongoing Northern Colorado fentanyl investigation led to an arrest on September 20th. The Colorado Drug Task Force arrested Joshua Edward Pruill on charges of unlawful distribution of narcotics, possession of drug paraphernalia, and unlawful possession with the intent to distribute methamphetamine and fentanyl. The bond for all of these charges combined adds up to $1 million. Pruill is currently being held at the Larimer County Jail. However, these charges are currently only accusations.
The Northern Colorado Critical Incident Response Team is currently investigating an incident that resulted in serious injuries to a Fort Collins detective. On September 29th at approximately 8 in the evening, undercover detectives conducting follow-up work to a previous case were near East 8th Avenue Street in Loveland. They were approached by an acquaintance of a suspect in their case who struck one of the detectives. The man was detained and questioned by Loveland Police and the Critical Response Team. Luckily, the detective was transported to a nearby hospital and is expected to recover.
After a heat wave scorched schools across the city to the point of early dismissals, the Poudre School District is saying that heat days are just short-term solutions to a long-term problem. Now, the district is looking for solutions, but with everything that is needed to be done, PSD realizes just how costly those changes may be. Multiple suggestions were made to deal with what heat that sent kids, parents, and staff alike running to the air conditioning at home. With temperatures soaring above 95 degrees and over 60% of the schools in the district not having access to air conditions, the community needs a solution. The idea of buying new air conditioning units was brought up. However, installing the AC needed could potentially cost over $100 million. Suggestions such as more use of remote learning and a later start to the school year were all suggested. One thing that the community is sure about, though, is the urgency of this situation. One parent wants something to be done as soon as possible and stresses that throwing small ideas like opening doors and windows is just putting a Band-Aid on a larger problem. And now that spooky season has blossomed into our lives, having all those fall colors and falling temperatures.
Adam Carlson joins us live to dive into what the weather has in store for Fort Collins. Adam?
That's right, guys. The temperatures have been fluctuating a bunch over the last couple of weeks. So without further ado, let's breeze right into it. Looking at tonight's current conditions, we're going to see it's mostly cloudy outside with the temperature of 62 degrees. We're hitting a humidity of 41 degrees, and it's only going to get worse as we get further into this fall season. Wind of 6 miles per hour. Heading into the fall, we're seeing those colors starting to change and leaves starting to fall off those trees. And in general, just it feels like fall again. Looking at tonight's overnight lows, we're going to see that down this I-25 corridor that we're in that general low 40 area. And then once we head into those eastern plains, Sterling, Lyman, Burlington, all in those high 30s. Lamar hitting us with a 44. Craig's in 32, and as we look at this mountain range, we're generally just going to see 30s. A low 32 in Gunnison and Alamosa, and then Vail and Telluride in those higher 30s, with Grand Junction hitting us with a 46. Tomorrow's highs, we're going to see a lot more variety in our temperatures. We're going to see down that I-25 corridor, we're going to see temperatures heating up. Pueblo all the way hitting at 66. Sterling, Lyman, and Burlington all in those 50s, and Lamar at 63. Looking at that mountain range, we're going to see Craig at 69, Vail, Gunnison, Alamosa also in those 60s. Telluride with 54, and Grand Junction hitting 76. Tomorrow's forecast, we're going to see that we're at a nice 57 degrees as our high and 38 as our low. We're also going to start seeing some clouds, and then 69 degrees, 69% humidity, 7-mile-per-hour wind, and heading into the 5-day forecast, we're going to see that it is all sunny throughout next week. Not many clouds, so take it while it lasts. Monday, Tuesday, we're going to have those mid-70s, and as we head further into that week, it's going to just be in those 60s. Friday, heating up a little bit at 67 degrees. And that brings me to the end of the weather for you all tonight. Back to you, JJ and Madison.
Thank you, Adam. If you are planning on traveling down I-25 soon, be aware that the frontage road section near Fossil Creek Reservoir will be closed for the next 3 weeks. Anyone traveling north of Highway 292 south to County Road 34E will need alternative routes of travel. This construction is a part of the North I-25 Express Lanes project. Essentially, this portion of the project will be the installation of an underground drainage line as part of the project's 100-year flood prevention plans. The road closed just around this time last year and did not reopen until the following May for reconstruction of Ketcher Bridge and a roundabout installation. This time, the closure is set to reopen on October 21st, and then until then, make sure to keep this closure in mind when it comes to your plans this weekend and for the next 3 weeks. While I-25 continues to have construction project after construction project, Fort Collins is also seeing some new transportation proposals.
Our live reporter, Gavin Wolf, joins us live in the studio with more. Gavin?
Thanks, guys. This past month, I've been taking a deeper look into transportation here on campus. And this week, our next stop is a closer look at the future of transport. According to Parking and Transportation Services at CSU, bus ridership has changed since COVID.
We saw our bus ridership go down, and a lot of it was due to we lost frequencies because we lost drivers. The city has about a 30 driver shortage.
Despite the shortage of bus drivers, students rely heavily on transport services.
Students are our #1 transit rider in the entire city. Our riders make up close to 60% through city surveying of their ridership.
Oh, I think most of the kids appreciate it. The price is right, and we try and cater to the CSU students as much as possible.
With the high volume of students counting on transport, students west of campus have a new addition to look forward to.
Right now, we are in the middle of final design for the West Elizabeth Bus Rapid Transit Corridor. So much as we have the MAX that runs on the east side of our campus, we have a need for a second route that runs to the Foothills campus. Most of our students, they live west of campus. We know this because, we map every year. We need to serve those neighborhoods. We have 4 routes today that serve the West Elizabeth corridor. It's not very efficient, but it moves a lot of people. So we're proposing to have a route that goes from Foothills to the main campus to MAX.
Since 60% of transport users are students, a bus route west of campus is a high priority for the transportation department. The project proposal for the new bus routes is still underway, but you can access all current bus schedules at the Transport website.
Thanks, Gavin. Some Fort Collins residents argue that the use of a helmet is equivalent to the safety of a seatbelt when riding a bicycle or a motorcycle. Last week, I talked about a death of a motorcyclist who was not wearing a helmet at the time of the crash, and I got to hear more from residents on the helmet debate.
I was in a lot of motorcycle accidents, and out of all those motorcycle accidents, I was only wearing a helmet one time. I was going down the interstate on a slight turn. I shifted on oil slick, and my back tire just went right out, so now here I am sliding down the interstate. So I actually put my helmet down and used my helmet to brake. I honestly really don't ride motorcycles now because of that.
Our state, Colorado, does not have a law when it comes to riding with a helmet on, so that means motorcycle or bicycle. It's up to the motorist or bicycle user to make that choice.
Helmets can decrease your risk of a traumatic brain injury or a death by up to 88%. So it's a huge addition to that protection. And they crash test these helmets to make sure that they can provide the level of protection.
I think that the discussion amongst riders wearing helmets, not wearing helmets, helmet laws is extremely diverse. Some people don't like the constraint of the helmet, not realizing the consequence. I've seen helmets be worn that have been completely split in half. To think and wrap your brain around that for a minute is a lot, because if you can crack a helmet in half, imagine what that can do to your skull. It's critical to think about what's the outcome going to be today if I make this choice.
When utilizing alternative transportation such as e-scooters, bicycles, or motorcycles, it is important to know the rules of the road and be aware of your surroundings to keep yourself and others safe.
On that note, we're going to take a short break.
But stick around, we'll be back with more news after this. Welcome back from the break, Rams.
The city of Fort Collins has acted as a home to those of diverse backgrounds. However, in communities of color such as the Black City's residents, have felt ignored and abandoned by a town that is not accepting. Now, with a culture left hurt from the shadows of the city's past, many in the Black community wonder what can be done and how they can heal.
How come our African American community don't stick together?
The Black community of Fort Collins has been here for over a century. With members dating back to the town's founding, Black people played an important part in how the city has become the success that it is today. However, Black residents felt that the city has not shown fair treatment to the community that was integral to its upbringing. The Nero family, an Afro-Latino family who's based here in Fort Collins, talks about their experiences here.
There lacks diversity, definitely. It's a difficult place to live in.
The family states that the lack of diversity here has caused them issues growing up.
My English class junior year, so it was me and then two other Black kids in the class, and that's like maybe 10%, but that was still like the most colorful classroom that I've ever been in. And I remember we would all sit with each other, and it was the first time I felt like I had people around me that were like me. Class had finished. I went home and I kind of broke down into tears because I felt so disconnected from my community.
When members of the community here feeling so hurt, we went to community leaders for answers. The Cultural Enrichment Center of Fort Collins' executive director, Jamal Skinner, speaks about the Black experience that residents regularly face.
It could be something as simple as having a $20 bill checked when you're going to 7-Eleven or something, assuming that you have counterfeit money, to blatant racism. People love to use the N-word when you're walking the streets. They drive by 40 miles an hour.
Skinner provides some historical context to the treatment of Black residents.
Moving from New York, what I noticed in Fort Collins, there is no Black neighborhood. I've never been to a city in my life where there doesn't exist a Black neighborhood. Fort Collins historically was maybe not fully on paper, was a sundown town. I don't believe Fort Collins believes that the Black people here have value or provide any value to this community.
Even some of Fort Collins' historical Black landmarks, like Cherry Street, the home of Black figures like Oscar Winter Hattie McDaniels, are still lacking in diversity and inclusion of Black people. Black citizen may be rough, the members of this community have not given up hope. and believe Fort Collins can right their wrongs.
Fort Collins growing as much as it is, that it will grow with diversity.
And if we're going to make it the space that Fort Collins claims that it is, it must face itself in the mirror based on its past history and treatment of the Black community here.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
After speaking with the city of Fort Collins, they stated that the city is doing all that they can to right the wrongs the Black community has gone through. They plan to continue giving the historic Black sites that are still left landmark status and plan to give more back to the Black community.
A temporary shelter for men experiencing homelessness is awaiting approval from the city of Fort Collins. They want to extend their stay for another winter season, despite efforts to have the shelter relocated. The temporary shelter is located on 212 Mountain Avenue. Originally, the city, in partnership with Fort Collins Rescue Mission and Vineyard Church, hoped to relocate the shelter to a part of the Vineyard campus. However, the funding for the church's renovations, estimated to be around $1 million, was not able to come together. The city, as well as members in the community, have shared their concerns regarding the shelter's location on Mountain Avenue. The city's homelessness response and solution specialist, Brittany Depew, said the shelter's current location impacts surrounding businesses and communities near Mountain Avenue. They would like the shelter to be relocated to a different part of the town so the impact is spread out a little more.
The housing situation in Fort Collins continues to decline. While some hold on to the hope that new practices and solutions will quickly fix this long-lasting problem, the Colorado Future Center says, don't hold your breath. The center conducted research to see if the market's ever-changing conditions will see affordable housing rates improve. The hope is that the market change will eventually allow the housing market to correct itself. They conduct this research by analyzing the decline in house prices required for a house to be considered affordable housing. However, after further research, the study found that the strategy was outdated. The conditions that they thought they needed to complete the market correction are as old as 2015. Affordable housing challenges have been an issue in Fort Collins and Colorado for almost a decade now. This group is not the only one discussing housing in our community this week.
Our ASCSU beat reporter, Kyra McKinley, joins us live to tell us how our student government is discussing this very topic. Kyra?
Thank you, guys. Last week, I sat down with Nick DeSalvo, the Speaker of the Senate at ASCSU, to hear about his plans on working towards changing housing restrictions in Fort Collins, specifically the U+2 law.
Over the summer, I asked Governor Polis if he'd sign something into law that would foundationally allow one person per bedroom, and he said he was open to it. And so when I discussed that with State Senator Joanne Ginal just briefly, maybe a month ago, she wasn't very receptive to it initially, but when I said Governor Polis might be on board, the tune kind of changed a little bit. So I still think that's the right approach. Of course, going to the state level and trying to get state senators to vote for something that affects a local community more is pretty difficult, but I don't think it's impossible.
Then I proceeded to ask Nick if he could ever foresee U+2 policies changing on a local level.
I think it was last semester we had met with a couple of city council members. One, for example, Councilwoman Peel, she ran on maybe changing U+2, and so she's very open to it. On the flip side of that, there are council members that represent the area around the university largely that have a big mixture of community members that are permanent and college students that are renting. He is very in favor of U+2 and keeping the housing restrictions as they are. So I think there might be some room for change. It depends on if the political will is there.
As DeSalvo said, there are currently many plans in the works that will try to help change housing restrictions here in Fort Collins. Back to you guys.
So JJ, can you explain to me a little bit more about what U+2 is?
Well, it's just essentially a law that prevents more than 3 unrelated residents living in a place at a time, and it really just isn't the fairest. I mean, to me, I personally just don't agree with it.
Yeah.
It's not something I would really subscribe to.
Seriously, 3 people maximum? That's insane.
Yeah.
Did you know CSU has a goal for 100% sustainability by 2023? Because of that, the solar panels across the Fort Collins campuses will nearly double, with an additional 20 panels to be installed. Now, 20 panels may not seem like too many, but the amount of electricity they will deliver is equivalent to powering 827 homes, all from sustainable energy. CSU is moving closer to achieving this goal thanks to a 2-year project plan powered by an agreement from Solaris Energy and Namaste Solar. Governor Jared Polis will be attending CSU's solar celebration this Tuesday, where the solar project will be showcased. The event will take place at the Pavilion from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. Another celebration that took place at the end of last week was Clarkcella, celebrating journalism at CSU.
Our feature reporter, Zoe Hayman, joins us live in the studio with all the information about the festive occasion. Zoe?
Thanks, guys. Colorado State journalism and media communication majors were invited to the event of the year, Clarkcella. Faculty and students joined together to celebrate. The Clark Courtyard hosted students and faculty to celebrate Clarkcella this past Friday.
I'm Michelle Ansel. I am an instructor in the Journalism and Media Communications Department and one of the coordinators of Clarkcella. My favorite part of Clarkcella is seeing students interact with one another and interact with faculty and organizations that maybe they didn't know existed before, and just getting to learn more about what's available for them.
One of the special things about Clarkcella this year is the work and creativity that went behind making the design.
And we just wanted design elements that were going to be very fun and that people would recognize them. And obviously the squirrels, I mean, you know the squirrels.
My name is Rowan. I'm a second-year journalism major. I'm minoring in music, stage, and sports production. It's fun to see the community of journalism majors and to learn new things that maybe you don't know that could make your experience at CSU better.
Whether you chose to check out some of the major's journalism clubs and programs, or got to hang with cats and eat ice cream, this year's Clarkcella was one to remember. It might not have been the same as Coachella, but it was pet-friendly and had ice cream, which is a lot better in my opinion. Back to you guys.
With that, Rams, we've come to the end of our news segment for you tonight.
But don't click away just yet, though. Leah Kukowski joins us live to update you next on the volleyball's game against Nevada, as well as a special feature report on CSU's football coach.
You may not want to miss it.